The only guitar I can play is air guitar. Hi, I'm Andrei Mincov, the founder of Trademark Factory, and in this video, I'm going to share my thoughts about yet another trademarking screw-up. This time around, it's Gibson going after other guitar manufacturers who, in the words of Gibson, are stealing the iconic shape of their guitars. Let me start by reading from the article, and you can always find the link in the description below. Gibson sues Dean Luna Guitars for trademark infringement and counterfeiting. Gibson has filed a lawsuit against Armadillo Distribution Enterprises, the owner of Dean Guitars and Luna Guitars, for several alleged legal violations, including trademark infringement and trademark counterfeiting. The former charge is relatively common, but the latter charge implies that Dean and Luna meant to deceive customers into purchasing what they believed were Gibson guitars. If proven, trademark counterfeiting generally carries harsher fines and punishments than trademark infringement. Gibson's lawsuit alleges that Armadillo copied and profited from multiple Gibson designs and styles. Last week, Mark Agnesi, Gibson's director of brand experience, posted an unexpected video to YouTube. Though the clip was quickly taken down, it was viewed by a substantial number of music fans, and it has since been re-uploaded. In short, the video was a warning that Gibson would soon explore litigation against brands that have, allegedly, benefited from the use of Gibson's assets. While the video left many viewers scratching their heads, it seems that Gibson was not bluffing. One of the specified lawsuits was filed in a Texas court. Dean Guitars was founded in 1977, and most of the alleged trademark violations stem from guitars that have been on the market for well over a decade. Indeed, Gibson has a relatively extensive history of taking competitors to court. In 1977, the Nashville-based company sued Japan's Hoshino Gakki, a musical instrument company, for copying the Les Paul. Gibson took another Japanese instrument company, Fernandez Guitar, to court in 2000. The court ruled in Fernandez's favor. In 2010, Gibson sued a Canadian toy maker for their plastic guitar toys, which were alleged to look like Gibson guitars. Armadillo CEO Ivan Rubinson denied that any Armadillo brand has violated Gibson's guitars. He indicated in his statement that he believes Gibson's current trademarks are too general. We're actually going to go through that in a moment, but first, let me also read the response from Dean. So Gibson's claims are entirely baseless. Dean Guitars CEO responds to lawsuit. So the parent company of Dean Guitars and Luna Guitars, Armadillo Enterprises, has responded to Gibson's multi-million-dollar trademark infringement lawsuit, as first reported on Guitar.com, robustly refuting Gibson's allegations and vowing to take the fight to Gibson in the courts. In a letter sent out to Armadillo's dealer network that has surfaced on Reddit, the company's CEO and president, Ivan Rubinson, told his commercial partners that he wanted to give an accurate and complete story about Gibson's claims, which we believe are entirely baseless, and alleviate any concerns Gibson's unfortunate tactics may have caused you. In the letter, Rubinson notes that you may have received a letter from Gibson saying that it decided to pursue actions against us in connection with the alleged copying of the Flying V, Explorer, and ES335 guitar shapes, and refers to demands made by Gibson in relation to the company's V and Z-shaped guitars that dealers may receive. Rubinson describes Dean as a 43-year-old iconic American-based guitar company, explaining that Dean Guitars has been continuously offering the V and Z-shaped guitars since at least 1976 for over the past 40 years. These guitars have been widely seen and promoted for decades, including in popular music videos, on stages with famous artists across the globe, at trade shows, and other prominent industry events. He further claims, many other companies have been using these generic shapes for decades. We believe the alleged Flying V and Explorer shapes are unprotectable and Gibson's trademark registrations should be invalidated. Continuing his strong counter-argument to Gibson's claims, Rubinson asserts that Armadillo will counter Gibson's suit with actions of its own. If Gibson pursues its claims, we will vigorously defend ourselves and seek to cancel Gibson's alleged trademark registrations. Away from the controversy over the Explorer and Flying V trademarks, Rubinson also counters Gibson's complaint towards Luna's take on the ES style, confirming that the company is part of the consortium already taking legal steps to try to counter Gibson's claims. Dean Guitars, together with a number of other guitar makers, have already initiated an opposition proceeding before the US Patent and Trademark Office in a collective industry effort to curb Gibson's attempts to claim exclusive rights to this generic shape, he says, referring to the ES335 design. Ending the letter to Armadillo's dealers, Rubinson sounds a note of support for intellectual property rights, but reiterates his claims that Gibson's claims are without merit. We respect and value the intellectual property rights of others, he asserts, but we also recognize that some things are just too common and basic for one company to claim as their own property. Now let's quickly go through the list of trademarks that Gibson registered. Now that's a great lesson. We're going to go through the value of not each of these trademarks, but some of these trademarks, and I'll explain the strategies behind it, but have a look at how many and what they did in order to protect their rights. So they got all sorts of shapes, your little parts, some of the things that are somewhat recognizable, the necks, all of these things they trademarked. Right? Again, I'm not a guitar player. I don't really know the names of these parts. Other than the necks, but the strings. But I'm sure people who play guitar will laugh at this part. But what matters is have a look at all the things that Gibson trademarked. These are all registered trademarks. The shapes of the whole body, and the specific parts, and they got a bunch of word marks, right? They got all of these names, all of these, all of this phrases and one word names, and so they got ES and they got all of that trademark. These are literally dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of trademarks that Gibson owns. Now, here's the background. You've seen, you've heard the allegations from both parties. Here's what's really going to happen. There's a very fine line when a distinctive, recognizable shape that is trademarkable and ownable as a trademark becomes functional, and that fine line is pretty murky. Because it's really very subjective. At what point do you say, well, in order for this to be used as a guitar that guitar players can play easily and conveniently, you need to have this shape, right? And with electric guitars, it's a bit less of a concern because unlike acoustic guitars, the shape can be varied, right? Which is why we have all those crazy shaped guitars that Kiss uses, like the guitar in the shape of an X and stuff like that. But even then, you still have to have some reasoning that goes to the balance of the instrument and how you make it so that it's still playable. Now, this is a fine line. On the other hand, there are recognizable shapes that are recognizable because it's a specific instrument, not because it's the only way to make that shape for guitar players to conveniently play it. But here's the kicker. Even if you've got this iconic shape and you got a trademark on that, a perfectly legitimate trademark, it's not functional, you got a trademark. The next question is, how far can you go to enforce it when others don't exactly copy that shape, but do something close? That becomes a massive headache for judges. That becomes a great way to bill a lot of hours for attorneys, because you can argue this thing all day long for days and days and months, and you can bill a lot of 100 hours doing that. Because really, then the question is, did they copy the design, which is protected design, or are they just building a guitar based on how you build a guitar? And the less distinctive the trademark design is, the easier it is to get away with coming up with something that looks somewhat similar but not quite. And so this would be extremely interesting to watch this, because again, is Gibson doing something wrong by getting all these brands trademarked? I don't think so. They're doing everything right, because it's not about, because the reason people pay them, and that was actually outlined in one of those comments to these to these articles, is that right now the reason Gibson can charge premium prices for their guitars is not that their guitars are of superior quality. It's because of the brand. It's because the brand is so famous, they can tell their potential clients, the potential buyers, the guitar players, like, we're not just any guitar, we're Gibson. And the only reason they can do it is because they have been consistently trademarking everything under the sun. That's the reason that Gibson can charge all of those premium prices. The list of these trademarks, that's the reason why. Now, are they doing the right thing by suing others? Maybe. Really, that depends on how close the guitars are and the reasoning behind it. And is there a risk that somebody is now going to be bullied into agreeing to stop making those guitars and instead will go and attack Gibson's marks and try to invalidate them? Maybe. And probably based on the comments, this is exactly what's going to happen. Dean looks pretty pissed, and looks like they are going to attack registrations, or at least some of the registrations. And we're going to see, because again, this will all boil down to two things. Is it still distinctive to Gibson, this particular shape? And is the copy, the alleged copy, really a copy or just another generic guitar that looks like a generic guitar? So we're going to look at that. But there's one argument that Dean makes that is very strong, that they have been selling and publicly displaying and demonstrating their guitars in countless videos, trade shows, all of that for years and decades. That could be their strongest argument, because if nothing else, that goes to the doctrine of estoppel, that goes to this idea that if a trademark owner knows that somebody's infringing their mark with impunity, without hiding, if they get away with doing that and the trademark owner does nothing, then when the trademark owner finally wakes up and says, "Oh, I actually don't like you doing this," at that point it could be too late, right? So this argument that they've been out there with their guitars and others have been out there with their guitars, the V shape, the Z shape, that could be what's going to decide this case. So even if Dean may not necessarily cancel Gibson's guitars trademarks, they may come out clean of this by saying, you didn't bother to enforce your trademarks against us or countless other guitar makers for years. You're not going to be able to do that now. Bye-bye. So either way, we're going to see how this goes. It looks like it's going to be a pretty public fight. And once we get an update, you'll know about this first. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.